What is going on? Internet Eric Panels back again with another e-commerce conversations. I hope all is well on the other side of the internet. On the other side of the internet from me, Nasrin, what's up?
Hey, Eric, what's up? So good to be here.
Yeah, living the dream. Happy as a Friday for us as we record this. I'm super excited for this conversation. Quick rundown. Who the heck are you? What the heck do you do?
Yeah. So my name is Nasrin Jafari. I'm the founder and designer of Mixed. We are a fashion brand, print-forward fashion brand based in Brooklyn. Before this, I was a middle school teacher, no experience or background in e-commerce. And this was kind of my first thing and tried it during the pandemic with masks, actually, is how it started. That was like the first physical good I'd ever shipped. And kind of found my way, turned it into this apparel brand. So, in a
Well, that's
nutshell.
pretty cool. Let's dig into that because I think I've
Yeah.
had a couple of former teachers
Oh,
who have
cool.
become entrepreneurs on the podcast before. Did you start on Etsy? I feel like that's kind of where a lot of people start. No?
No, I didn't start on Etsy. Just started posting during the pandemic. I was like literally cutting out mask patterns, sewing them by hand, and then I would just like do a post on Instagram, and then organically it would sell a ton. And I didn't really understand like Facebook ads and all of that, and I learned as I went. No, I started just on Instagram Meta.
What kind of teacher were you?
I was a 7th grade history and English teacher.
Oh my God. So it's not like you're even an art teacher or anything like that.
No, yeah.
Like, did you always have a passion for like crafts and creating or like?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like when I was younger, I would paint and I did some like art electives here and there. But and then when in high school, I was a competitive dancer and I considered going to school for dance. But I think the main through line is I really like to build worlds. What I like to boil down is think, feel, and do with other people. And when I was in college, I think the way that kind of converged was through teaching, and I really wanted to start a school. And in some ways, I think that starting a brand has some parallels to starting a school, building a world and culture and values and vision and doing things together. Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was younger, I would paint. I did art electives here and there. When I was in high school, I was a competitive dancer. But I've also been very academic. I've been drawn to business. I did the whole like selling snow cones after school, literally, like when I was in elementary school. I just so happened, I think that in college, all of these interests kind of converged into wanting to build a school. And I think in some ways, building a brand is not too dissimilar from starting a school. You have a vision, a mission. You're trying to get there with a group of other people. And of course, business is different, but I found that I really love like operating one.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about building school. That's a conversation that my business partner and I have had in the past.
Really?
She's more interested in building a school, and we have
In
some
the
pretty
US
strong.
or?
Yeah. We have
Nice.
some pretty strong opinions on education,
Yeah.
and not to go on like an education
Yeah.
rant, but I'm not very pro traditional schools. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity for improvement.
Do you have
Um,
kids?
I do. I have a couple
Okay.
kids, and we found here in Austin, there's kind of like an entrepreneurial styled school,
Cool.
which creates kind of like this. I think maybe we can tie this into business a little bit, but a lot of motivation for
Mm,
children comes from external
mm,
validation, specifically like grades and how you compare against your peers and things like
mm.
that. And the model that we were drawn towards is more about helping the child kind of go along their own pathway
Yeah.
and find their own you know uh,
Like
what they call that intrinsic
intrinsic, yeah.
motivation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like trying to create a culture of that, and I feel like as entrepreneurs, that's kind of what we do. Like nobody's telling us
Totally.
what to do, or if you're doing a good job, we have to
Totally.
feel like we're doing a good job for
Yeah.
ourselves. Is that something that you feel you're just kind of intrinsically motivated, or was there outside pressure pushing you into this?
No, I think definitely intrinsically motivated and really I didn't start, selling masks from the perspective of I want to start, I want to have like a 7, 8 figure, 9 figure fashion brand. It was more so like this is what's interesting to me now. Let me try it. Okay, it's working. Cool. Let me just move one step further in that direction. And I think coming from a place of just curiosity, interest, took a lot of pressure off of I don't know, some like great master plan.
Yeah. Let's talk about your brand. Your brand name is Mix.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, originally it came from the fact that I'm mixed. I'm Japanese, Iranian, and American. I have a lot of different, like, cultural tensions within me, but also a lot of like creative interests that are different that sometimes feel like they're at tension. I do think I have both very much like an operator mindset, but also clearly I am creative. I've designed every print to date for the brand and all the silhouettes. So I think I've always dealt with a little bit of tension across different areas of my identity. And I think what I found is what's the greatest unlock is when you can learn to walk that tension and not just choose to default to one side or the other, but to find the best parts of each and build that way. And so even I think about that even as I build this brand, I think about how can we blend like this, like the way of building e-commerce businesses, and that kind of traditional fashion model, and bring those two together to have like a lighter, leaner, faster business. And I have friends on both sides of that spectrum, and it's really interesting how a lot of the practices are really one or the other space.
I can't imagine getting into fashion. It seems like a very, very challenging
Definitely.
industry.
Yeah.
It's incredibly competitive. You have
Yeah.
like all these established players. You have kind of like this, fast fashion element where if you're not coming out with something new, then and then you have dead stock where stuff you can't move. Walk me through how you've been able to navigate fashion in today's environment.
Yeah. I think like going back to what I said initially, that this all started from a place of curiosity. I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't understand, now that I've run an e-commerce business for some years, I understand how to pick games better. And would I choose to go into the apparel game again? Like, I mean, I say probably not, because there's a side of it I love, which is that clothing is so close to people's identity. You can really build a brand and a world around that. There's always like a pro and a con that, a con that comes with every pro, vice versa. But how did I learn? I mean, I really learned by doing. It was clear to me that you know, inventory. I mean, it's still inventory is still something we deal with. That's really tricky, but because I was always afraid to over order inventory and have too much dead stock, I've always kind of under ordered, and then we ended up with like a pre-order model. So we do a lot of pre-order, which really helps our cash conversion cycle. And initially I didn't do that because I understood that that was actually good for cash flow. It was just what I ended up having to do because I was out of stock. But then I kind of like backed my way into like, okay, pre-order is actually great for business, great for cash flow. Understanding how like when I first started, I had like 2 collections a year because that's really all I could like put together. And now we have a drop every month, and understanding how important that moment is for our marketing calendar for the Meta machine. It wants new ad creative. We need to get new customers. And the con of that is that you always have to come out with new products, and that can feel tiring. But the pro of that is that you always have something new to talk about and new moments to build into, and that's exciting. But yeah, really everything has just been figuring out as I go. Sorry. Another thing is like returns. Returns are such a big part of apparel and e-commerce, and you have to acquire your customers in a way that is like takes your returns into account. I didn't understand that initially, and all just comes from like learning by doing.
Yeah, why can't everyone just be the exact same size and shape?
Yeah, exactly.
Why, why do I need all these SKUs,
Oh
So,
yeah, and all the
well,
SKUs. Yeah. No.
let's kind of talk about that scaling up, because I would imagine there's this like purgatory zone in
Hmm.
fashion where you're too small to kind of do these MOQs with any kind of manufacturer. Are you trying to get them manufactured in LA that have like lower MOQs, or are you trying to source them globally that have lower price points?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I kind of got a little lucky here in that at the time that I was looking for factories, it was during COVID, so a lot of floors were really open. And I found a factory that was based in India, whose owner was also based in New York. And I'm based in New York, and so there was that kind of great in-person element that we could have, where we could build trust and relationship. But then all the production happened globally, and they were willing to work with us at really low or pretty much non-existing MOQs, but at a higher price. I wouldn't say it was as high as LA, but um, it was definitely higher than like a typical price you'd get globally. And however, we were able to set the MSRP or AOVs around like $228. So we had about like 75% margin to start with, even at that higher price point. So I started out with a manufacturer that was more expensive, and as we've scaled and gotten to a place where we can order higher quantities, we've now moved to a factory, or not moved, but introduced a new factory where we can get lower cogs, and the whole game has just like completely unlocked and felt a lot easier to play.
Yeah, that's are you finding these people at like trade shows then? Or
No, I
just like
actually
Googling?
the first factory was Googling, and then after that it was recommendations from friends who are in the industry. And I really prefer those just because they worked with them, they vetted them, they like them, and then it's a warm intro.
How are you building these introductions with people within the industry?
I really don't network that much. I'm very like heads down, like do the work. And once you do the work, the right people will kind of come and you'll meet them. And that's honestly kind of how it happened. I did Andrew's podcast, which is kind of like how we connected. And from there, a couple people reached out, and we just, built relationships. We chat on WhatsApp. We meet in person, actually, even if they don't like live in the US. And yeah, so I think like I look for people who I really like to network with people who are where I have been, and people who are where I am going, or like also people who are in the same boat as me, just because I think all those perspectives offer something really like interesting and unique that you can learn from.
Let's dig into the, the question I'm going to try to ask is, part of fashion is building what's it called, like a tech spec or
Oh yeah, tech
technical.
pack. Yeah, I don't do
Yeah,
any
yeah.
of that.
Okay, so you don't do any of that.
No.
Are you like? There's a bit of us entrepreneurs who are
Yeah.
like, I can learn anything, I can do
Yeah.
anything. Was that ever like a concern of yours, where I'm like, oh, I should learn how
Yeah.
to make this? And how did you decide uh, the process that you ended up settling on?
Yeah, so when I first started, I had no idea how to make clothes, and so my initial instinct was like, okay, let me see if I can figure it out. So I literally like went to a Joann's Fabric, like try to follow like the pattern. I realized like quickly this is not going to be something that I'm going to be really great at, and if I want to learn how to do it, it's going to take time. So at that moment, like it was during COVID, I there was someone else that I had connected with on Instagram who seemed to really love the brand, and she was a home sewer, had never done anything commercially before. And I just asked her, I was like, hey, like, would you be interested in making the initial samples for the brand? And she was thrilled. And she really made the initial samples for the business, one of which continues to be our best selling product. And so I figured that that was a skill I wanted to outsource. And then eventually I moved to having my factories be that kind of like tech pack and designer type of thing. And it's really interesting because I talk to other, maybe brands that are in like 30, $50 million range in that traditional fashion wholesale environment, who they do the full tech packs. They do all the specs. They have like 5 designers that sit in an office physically and work on all of this. And the owners of those kinds of companies are like, I want to do away with all the tech packs. Like, it's a lot of stuff we don't really need to do. I can just send a sketch to my factory and they can make a sample. They know our specs like well enough where they can get, the right sizes. And so there's that's like going back to what I had said initially of like the old ways of doing things, the new ways of doing things. Like, how do you bring those two together? So yeah, so now I'm at a point where, like I said, factory does a lot of that. I send sketches with like very minimal uh, specs, and they can figure it out.
Yeah. So a lot of the factories have moved into that direction. Is that almost like a given at this point, that if you're going to work with a factory, they can handle that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it also depends on like what kind of clothing you create. If you have really bespoke garments, then you're going to have your own designer do it in house and really spec it out. But if it's something a little bit more simple, then I think a lot of factories have I mean, they've just made so many garments that they know what they're working with.
Yeah. Okay. You're also designing the patterns. Are you like in Illustrator doing that, or are you like a pen and paper? Like,
I do it on an iPad, where I'll just use like a stylist and an iPad in Procreate. So yeah, I design all the prints, but I just started. So my big like Q1 goal was to create a product team, and so I hired print designers that I just find globally on Upwork, who are amazing, and cost effective, and then also a fashion designer who is experienced in silhouettes and kind of that tech packing.
okay. And then your growth, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is been Meta. Is that pretty much
Yeah,
been?
Meta, 100% Meta. No Google, no TikTok, nothing, just Meta.
I've been, I did a little slooping. Is that the right word? Snooping of your ads.
Yeah.
And I feel jealous because it's just like new arrivals. and then
Yes.
it's a model just showing off the
Yes.
clothes and like the same music. So it's like you have this blueprint,
Yeah.
and it seems like it's working,
Yeah.
I guess. And from an ad creative perspective, I would imagine like there's not a lot of hitting your head against the
Exactly.
wall.
Concepts.
Yeah, how long did it take to land on that ad format?
Yeah, so we have a couple different ad formats, and we have like a meta flywheel that we are working on just continuing to scale. And we have like, the X number of days where we do content shoots. We need to find talent. We need to find people to capture that. And we actually do all of that, what you could call in-house. So we have our own content capturers who go and create like film that content with talent. We don't have them do it themselves. We take the raw media, we edit it in the Philippines, and then upload new ads to Meta every week. In terms of the concepts, I when I was getting started, I would I mean my first ad that hit was literally just like it was I remember I was, like, out with a girlfriend who I'd met for the first time, and I was like, "Hey, like, do you mind just, like, shooting this for me really quick, just down the corner, and, like, if you just hold," And I just, like, I took it, I stepped back, I showed off the jumpsuit in a couple different angles, lit nothing fancy, we probably wrapped it in, like, 30 seconds, and that was the first ad that, like, took off in Meta, and really the first ad that I had launched, like, from the ads manager. Um and from there, I was like, okay, like I can just kind of like show off my outfit in the city. Let me try that again with a different jumpsuit. It worked again. And then it worked again. And I was like, okay, so that's interesting. I could just show off the outfit. And then I started working with HAF Growth, Andrew Ferris's agency. And that's where we kind of unlocked the explainer video, which is like me talking about the garment. This is the fabric, this is the stretch, this is how it fits, blah, blah, blah. And I remember when he told me to make it, I was kind of reluctant, and so I had filmed it, like, right before I left for holiday break, and I didn't half-ass it, but I was like I would just like, "Okay, let me just do it quick on my phone and everything," and that completely, like, unlocked that account, and I actually think it unlocked a different audience, and I think the audience was older, which I think makes sense for, like, the explainer video, and after we figured out the explainer, we were like, "Okay, great, so we can do these outfit checks," which was the first, like, content pillar, and then we can do these explainers, and then we have a couple different, like, other concepts, but it's all quite simple. Because at the end of the day with fashion, it's like, do you like the product? Yes or no? And that's it. It's not about like convincing from all these angles, us versus them. It's really just like, here's the product. You want to have the right model. You want to have a background that's interesting. And that's why new product is so important because the new product is the new concept, right? It's not like the angle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice for such a visual product. You talked about you kind of leaned into pre-sales as
Yeah.
well. So is that part of the marketing strategy? You're doing these ads, you're driving them to a prototype that will be ready, and then if that's the case, like how long's that turnaround, and how do you manage that process?
Yeah, so it's not a 100% pre-order model. It is like, we do launch with minimum, like with like a limited quantity. And then based on what does well, we'll reorder that. And so, yeah, so it's not a true pre-order in the sense that we're only making what is sold, but it's a mix of like pre-buying inventory and then reordering based on what's working in Meta.
Okay. Are you dealing with any slow movers and dead stock? And if so, like what are
I
your best
mean,
practices?
Definitely there's not everything hits, but because I never have gone out the gate, like, on a first PO ordering a ton of stuff, I've never had to liquidate inventory. Everything we've been able to sell through 100% just on or maybe, we probably have, like, a 20 to 100 random pieces in the back of our warehouse right now, but, um, everything we just sell through during a sale moment, and just being really careful to not overorder inventory. However, where that has left us is like having no inventory. So I could like literally take my laptop and walk you through our inventory where it's just like nothing in there, which is, we're still doing really sales are great still. So I'm like, gosh, if we could just be in stock, like what other demand would we capture? I don't know how big of a difference that would
That's
be.
my favorite problem to work
Yeah.
on. I've had a lot of other problems that
Yeah,
aren't as
exactly.
fun
It's like
as that
not a
one.
bad problem to have. Yeah.
So you're kind of moving through that. Are you handling your own fulfillment then? So
Yeah.
is that
Yeah. We're handling our own
okay?
fulfillment.
Walk me through that decision. Is it the
Yeah.
returns and managing that, or
Yeah, I think part of it was the returns. Part of it was like initially we just didn't have order volume consistency that I feel like order volume consistency really happened like last year, where I didn't feel like it was great to go to a 3PL. Other than that, because of the whole pre-order model and constant like that whole bit, getting like inbounding inventory into a 3PL and the time delay between when it's there and then when it's in stock would also add like an additional layer of friction in terms of getting stuff to customers on time. And then, yeah, I think we just like I didn't have enough, and we still don't really have enough like systems in place for us for that 3PL onboarding to be smooth. There's also a part of it where like we have our fit. This is our I'm sitting in like our studio space, which functions as a warehouse office and kind of a showroom and event space. So we do have like people who come here who shop in person. It's like 1 or 2% of sales. It's not like meaningful from a sales perspective, but we meet a lot of our customers. We understand the product better because of that. Some of those people become talent for our ads. So there's definitely like a community aspect to having garments here as well.
I would imagine that as you continue to get scale, you get a fair amount of retailers who are interested in carrying your products.
I
Uh,
mean, no, small boutiques will reach out definitely. No like big names, but small boutiques have. I just chose not to go that route because it would just I'm very much like a person who likes to focus on the highest leverage opportunity, and managing smaller accounts felt like something I wasn't going to do very well.
how hard is it for you to say no to those things?
That one, that those don't feel hard to say no. I think because Meta has just been working so well that uh, if I compare those two things, it's like it's that I feel like that's not a hard no for me.
Where do you feel like you're getting distracted or pulled away from your core focus?
Um, That's such a great question. I think, I mean, particularly right now. So I think what I'd mentioned to you when we had met initially is that I brought on my partner to take over operations, and so there's a lot of change happening right now in terms of before I was in charge of the entire business, and now my scope is like narrowing in on product and marketing, and so trying to figure out what things I need to let go of that I used to be, I used to have to like keep an eye on, and then shifting my time into like what are the highest leverage things within product and marketing. And also now that I've brought on designers and print designers, it's like my job is not to execute the designs anymore, but to create the merch line plan and the budget allocation and what categories are we expanding into. And it's just I think, yeah, a different allocation of my time. Um, what is distracting me most is probably like, I don't know. I don't know. And I will say honestly, I do think one of the things that has helped me is that I'm pretty good at focusing on just a couple things, sometimes to the detriment though, where it's like I allow many small fires to burn and I'm like, it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal. And I look up, I'm like, okay, I probably like should have paid attention to that.
Yeah, I would imagine for creative types like you, like having the ops off your plate, like did that feel like a big relief, or did you
Yes.
have kind of like trust concerns with that, just making sure you have inventory and
Yeah.
things
I
keep
mean,
moving?
definitely, it's a huge relief off of my plate. I can already feel like my bandwidth opening up for other areas of the business, which is really exciting. I'm still in like returns and not returns, like inventory and product. It's only been like 30 days that we've done this, so I'm still in it. But no, I wouldn't say like, no, I'm sure there are areas where I feel like I used to be like in charge of that, and like now I'm not, and I used to being like the only kind of person in that kind of a position, and now I'm not. So definitely some adjustments, but I do think um, ultimately, like maybe an hour after I have like an emotional reaction, I'm like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, there's a lot of things that me personally, I hold closely to my heart,
Mm,
and seeing other people do them in ways that
you wouldn't,
clearly
yeah,
you wouldn't do them.
yeah,
It's not to say they're worse, but it's also like kind of talking about the design aspect of things. Like
yeah,
design and product's a big part
totally,
of your brand,
totally.
and you have different designers cranking
Hmm.
out things. Um, Walk me through, what that process is like when you feel like they're missing the mark, and how do
Yeah.
you guide them uh, towards being on point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've only had experience so far with working with print designers. My fashion designer, she just onboarded on Monday, so we haven't really gone through that experience. However, we did like take home projects where I could see how each candidate took feedback on designs, and I think for me, what I'm always thinking about when we're creating like each piece is like who is the customer and what does she want, what does she need, what have we already given her? What do we need to give her next? And really come from a place where it's not so precious. I mean, it's a mix of what I like, of course, because I think that what I like usually, sometimes, often, whatever tends to do well as a product, whether it's because we know how to market it better or people like the brand because there's some level of my taste injected into it. Um, but I really tried to, I don't know, I don't think I'm so precious with design. I definitely have like certain things I like and don't like, but at the end of the day, I'm open and I try to think about like who the customer is, make it for her. And at the end of the day, like the sales will speak for themselves. So if there's something like I try to think about like what hill I'm willing to die on and what I'm not. And if there's something that's like, okay, I might not have gone that direction, but let's do a small test. And if it does well, great. Then we can like, move further into that direction. And if it doesn't, then we'll pivot away from it. Um, but yeah, it's been like I said, I've only started working with print designers in this capacity, but it's been great. I mean, they'll send me the print, and what's really cool is for the first time I'm able to look at something and say like, let's change the color here, the saturation here, let's add texture here. And it's like all these like micro decisions I was making in my mind when I was designing, but never actually having vocalized it. It's very interesting to now vocalize that and like kind of do these iterations to get to the right print at the end of the day. And I'm really excited for some of the new ones we have coming up from other folks.
You mentioned coming at it, the design from a place of what does your customer want? Who is your customer?
Yeah, so she is 30, I would say anywhere from like 35 to 65-year-old woman who is very much in like whether she's in a transitional state in her life or she's in a place where she's kind of like reclaiming like what she wants out of her life, having agency over the way she wants to build it. She definitely has like a creative lean to her, I would say, marches to the beat of her own drum. She wants to like be seen in full color, which is kind of what our tagline is at a place in her life where she is not willing to like live by other standards or expectations, but really wants to step into who she is and to be seen boldly for that. Um, yeah. I mean, she lives in major cities, but also we definitely have folks across all parts of the U.S. And yeah, they are teachers, they are people who work in corporate, they are creatives themselves, pottery makers, business owners, entrepreneurs. There's a lot of different types of people, but I think very like high agency, those who want to build the life of their own making, I'd say.
How did you discover that, or
Yeah.
come to terms with that, how to describe that?
Yeah. So, we have, like I mentioned briefly, a pretty big community aspect to this brand. And that really started, I think, it's just the way I understood how to build. It wasn't really like this is like a community strategy. I think part of that comes from me being a teacher. But, for example, when we started initially growing the business, we would do community events like live in person. So once a year, we would do like an annual fashion show where we would release the new collection live. It was like 200 folks would come. We'd probably get like 600 RSVPs. That would whittle down to 200 folks who would show up to our studio. They would watch the runway show and then they would shop in person, try on. So that was like one major event we did a year, and we would do like monthly or twice a month in person shopping at the studio. Other lots of different types of events that we've done. And then we recently started like a Circle community. Circle is like a platform. A lot of people use it for like selling
Courses.
courses, yeah. But we're not selling anything on there. It's really just a space mainly for me to share product i- at like the product discussions around like here are the prints. What do you think? Da, 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 like that kind of stuff. And hold virtual events. So we have now about maybe 400 to 500 folks. We just launched it recently who are in Circle. And it's super cool because we're chatting about like the product. People are introducing themselves. People create profiles. They have like their profile photo is them and they're wearing mixed. Some of them have like a bio and a headline so you can see like where they live, what they do, how they describe themselves. So we have so much of that like qualitative data around like who they are. I also write like a weekly Sunday newsletter that's just nothing to do with like fashion or sales. It's just like thoughts, musings, reflection, and a lot of people respond to that. And so we get an understanding of who she is that way. So a lot of different touch points. Yeah.
I got to feel like within building this community and getting to know them, there are probably some, let's call it like edge case customers who are kind
Hmm.
of like more on the adjacent side who, aren't 100% like this vibe
Yeah.
that you're going after. Like, how difficult is it for you to take their, critiques or suggestions and input and, either pleasantly saying no or, developing a kind of a new arm for the brand?
Yeah, in terms of like how I take their feedback into product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very much like always a grain of salt because we know that the people who are in circle, who are posting in there actively are going to be like the super fans. And I'm not just designing for super fans, I'm also designing for the woman who's a little bit more subtle and also for the new customers who we haven't acquired yet who may have like a slight, just lean somewhere different. So I think it's, I don't, it's not when I talk about like product discussions, it's not so much like I'm updating them on everything. And if I take their comment into consideration or I don't really say that. I'm more so like, that's great, like that's interesting. I may take it into account, I may not. But it's a balance of again, like what I feel like in my gut, what has performed historically. And then we'll put out like polls where we ask people to do like, what are your top 3 prints? So we just released that like earlier this week. We got like around 1,500 responses, and that directionally gives me an idea of like what prints people like, and directionally informs my buys into those prints. But it's just a mix, that special sauce of like gut feedback, historical data. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of let's use the term everyone's using, just like vibe
Yeah.
product development. It's like the vibes. I think there's yeah, I kind of had this conversation with my team members at Bbrand. It's like if it's my opinion versus your opinion, we're going to go with mine because I just have so many years
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
insights and thought process of,
Yeah.
and it's just I can't quantify everything,
Yeah.
but it's like at the end of the day, like I just kind of there's something that happened in the past that's
Yes.
guided
Yes.
me in this
Yes.
direction.
I
But
heard
if it's
someone say
your data versus my vibe, we'll go with your data,
that.
because then you have something kind of
Solid to go off
quantitative.
of. Yeah.
Where can people buy your clothes, support you, follow you,
Yeah,
reach out?
they can go to mixedbynasrin.com.
There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Thanks, Eric.
This has been another e-commerce conversations. Cheers.
Cheers.
Keep on growing.